Natasha and Her Illegitimate Child in a Muslim Society. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This story is narrated in 2 books. Book 1. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief passages in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the actual life of a Muslim family in Sudan. Therefore, all names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental. Chapter 43. On being a bastard son in a Muslim society. Natasha spent 3 weeks in the hospital before she is fully recovered from that life-threatening rape and murder attempt. She lost half of her weight during her days of hospitalization. She is still weak, and half of her body is gone. She has been advised by the hospital to continue her bed rest. During this period of her slow recovery, Pastor Wahid canceled all his classes in that semester and remained beside his wife nursing her day and night. Many media people tried to have access to her, but they have been prevented by her husband. Her police protection had been removed as soon as she got discharged from the hospital. The police authority concluded that Sheikh Yasser left the country for good, and there is no reason to worry about the safety of Natasha after her rapist fled out of Canada. Slowly, Natasha began to regain her weight and health. She went a couple of times to her doctor to check the health condition of the baby in her womb. In both visits, the doctor assured her that she has nothing to worry about her conception. The baby boy seemed to be in good health and growing normally inside her womb. Natasha delivered that baby in 6 months' time. The hospital kept it in a tube for 3 months before his mother could claim him back. He is a lovely baby boy. Natasha named him after her loving late grandfather, Sami Shams al-Din. She refused to give her newborn son the last name of her evil biological father, Saif al-Din, but she gave him the last name of her husband. Therefore, now Pastor Wahid and Natasha have 2 children, Nadia and Sami Muhammad Ahmed. As soon as the new baby was born, Natasha and her husband faced a serious problem. It is neither ethical nor parental, but a financial problem. Their 2 children were both born out of their plan. They did not plan to give birth to either of them. Natasha conceived her baby girl, Nadia, before she got married to her lover Wahid. Likewise, she got her baby son, Sami Shams al-Din, against her wish. She conceived him through rape and refused to abort him because she and her husband believe abortion is a murder crime and a terrible sin in the eyes of God. Anyway, the issue before them is how they, as students with limited income, can take care of such small babies who are separated from each other by a gap of 1 year. Pastor Wahid and Natasha are not yet settled down and still planning to continue their education. They have no income except the little student loans they are receiving from the government. They have either to sacrifice their studies and take care of their babies or else struggle with the care of their children and their studies. They found the second alternative is not practical. Pastor Wahid proposed that he should quit his theological studies at the Bible College and find a job to support the family, whereas Natasha should continue her university studies. However, they found out such a solution is not practical because hiring a babysitter for 2 children would require more than half of their income. The other alternative is that Natasha should stay at home and look after her small babies, and Pastor Wahid should find a full-time job to support the family. Sadly, the second solution would deprive both of the opportunity of getting a good education to secure better employment in the future. When both solutions seemed to be impractical, Pastor Wahid proposed a third alternative. He proposed that they should sponsor his mother and bring her from Sudan to Canada to take care of her 2 grandchildren. Natasha is exceedingly overjoyed when her husband came up with such a brilliant idea. All this time she avoided asking him about his family in Sudan. She remembered that her late grandfather told her that Pastor Wahid had lied to them about his place of birth, Muslim family, and the university where he claimed he had attended before his conversion to Christianity. But on that day, when he came up with that solution, Natasha was compelled to ask him to clarify to her what her grandfather said about him. When he has been confronted by his false claims, Pastor Wahid for the first time has opened his hidden secret and revealed his true identity to his wife. That day, Natasha did not only come to know that her husband had lied about his place of birth and family, but he fooled her about his claim to be born and brought up as a Muslim boy. He admitted that he has never been a Muslim all his life. He was born to a Muslim mother but brought up by Christian parents. He has seen neither his mother nor his father in all his life. He learned from his Christian parents that he is an illegitimate child. His mother gave birth to him in an orphanage owned by the Christian couple who brought him up. On the same day his mother gave birth to him, she had dumped him like refuse in that orphanage and disappeared from his life forever. He did not know even what her name is or what the name of the man who impregnated her. It seemed that his mother got rid of him to avoid public disgrace or honor killing. In addition, Pastor Wahid confessed that his real name isn't Omar or Wahid Muhammad Ahmed. He had been named by his Christian parents as Gurgis Gabriel. However, when he came to Canada, he changed his name to Wahid Muhammad Ahmed. He did that because he knew that Gurgis Gabriel is a Coptic Christian name. He is aware that he does not look like a Sudanese Coptic Christian, but in every way, he resembled an Arab Muslim. He learned from his Christian parents that his real Sudanese mother and father are Arab Muslims. He remembered that such a mixed-up personality created a lot of harassment and persecution for him in Sudan and led to a serious identity crisis. To avoid the recurrence of such social stigma and not to be an odd individual among the Sudanese Muslim community in Canada, he faked that false claim of being born and brought up as a Muslim, but when he grew up, he rejected Islam and accepted Christianity. He made everyone believe that his Muslim name before his conversion was Omar Muhammad Ahmed, but after he had been Christianized, he changed it to Wahid Muhammad Ahmed. His Christian parents are known as Mr. Wahid Morgas and Mrs. Mary Morgas. They are a childless couple. But they could not be able to adopt him as their son because according to the Islamic Sharia law, adoption is illegal in Islam and a crime punishable by the law in the Muslim world. When Gurgis Gabriel had become 5 years old, a childless American couple came to his Christian parents and proposed to adopt him as their son and take him to live with them in Los Angeles. They promised to give him their family name and treat him like their own child. Morgas' family gladly accepted the proposal and gave permission to the American couple to take Gurgis to their country. When the American couple tried to obtain official papers for his adoption from the Ministry of the Interior Affairs in Khartoum, a huge problem happened. The American couple had no idea that adoption was illegal in Sudan and a crime punishable by the law in a Muslim country. The government of Sudan accused the Morgas family of selling a Sudanese child as a slave to the American couple. Mr. Wahid Morgas was arrested along with the American couple. The Sharia court found all three guilty of practicing illegal deals and sentenced them to 6 months in prison and 40 lashes each. After they received the 40 lashes and served their sentences in the jail, the American couple returned to their country and left Gurgis in the hands of his Christian parents. After that, Pastor Wahid narrated to his wife Natasha how Christians as well as Muslims in Khartoum ill-treated him. Because he happened to be an odd individual, the Coptic Christians in Sudan did not treat him with respect. His peers somehow came to know that he was an illegitimate child and made so much fun of him. The grown-up Christians disliked him and never accepted him as an equal Christian like them. At first, his parents put him in a public school that had only Muslim children. In that school, the Muslim teachers and children tortured him because he is a Christian, although he looked in every way like an Arab Muslim Sudanese. Neither his name nor his family name seemed to suit him. Many times, his teachers confronted him in front of other children with very embarrassing questions. They often asked him, "How come that you are a Christian and having a Coptic name when you don't resemble a Coptic Christian boy at all?" Gurgis Gabriel had no answer to that question except his tears. His silence and oddness caused a nasty rumor to spread among the students that he was a bastard. It would be more tolerable to be treated as an untouchable outcast in a Hindu society than an illegitimate child in a Muslim country. Therefore, due to that nasty rumor, he could not be able to stay in that Muslim school for long. Then, his parents transferred him to a Christian school. His Christian teachers and classmates likewise continuously troubled him because of his odd personality. Therefore, he refused to go to that school too. Finally, his Christian parents allowed him to quit school and stay at home. Even so, by staying at home his problem did not disappear. Being a small boy, he wanted friends to play with him. All his neighbors' children were Coptic Christians, and none of them would like to associate himself with such an odd child. He was nicknamed by the Christian neighbors' children, Wad al-Haram, or a bastard boy. Whenever he protested, someone would challenge him to show where his true parents were and what their real names are. In the beginning, Gurgis used to fight with any child called him Wad al-Haram. Whenever he fought with a child and beaten him up, the parents of that child would come and complain to his Christian caretakers. Sometimes, the parents of that child would confront him in front of other children with the truth that he is truly a bastard boy. Gradually, Gurgis was forced to accept that he was truly a bastard son, or Wad Haram, and stopped fighting against any child who called him by that disgraceful name. When he was forced by the Sudanese society to accept his real identity, Gurgis requested his parents to send him back to that Christian school. Somehow, he managed to stay in that school until he finished grade 12. Anyway, Wahid told Natasha that somehow, he managed to live in Sudan until he became 18 years old. When he reached that age, he requested his Christian parents to allow him to move to Egypt and seek refugee asylum over there. Morgus' family accepted his suggestion and agreed to send him to Egypt. They gave him an official letter from the orphanage signed by them. They explained in that letter how Gurgis Gabriel suffered many persecutions from the Muslim community as well as the Christian community in Sudan. They also mentioned that he was persecuted, abused, and tortured by the two Sudanese communities, Muslims as well as Christians, because he is an illegitimate child. His mother is a Sudanese Arab Muslim from the Ja'aliya tribe, but she abandoned him on the day she gave birth to him because she conceived him out of adultery. He was raised up in their Christian orphanage. Even in the Coptic Church, Christians treated him as a parasite or subhuman and never accepted him as a Christian. When Gurgis reached Egypt and applied for refugee status on a humanitarian basis, the United Nations office in Cairo rejected his application. The UN office informed him that only political applicants who are originally from the troubled and war-zone areas such as south of Sudan and Darfur province would be accepted. After his rejection, Gurgis found himself standing at crossroads, either to return to Sudan and continue that intolerable social persecution or continue to live in Egypt and find a way to support himself. He chose to continue to live in Egypt and earn his living by working as a servant in Egyptian houses. For 2 years, Gurgis Gabriel worked as a servant in Egyptian homes, cleaning houses, washing and ironing clothes, babysitting children, nursing seniors, and doing much other housework. In Egypt, the house servant is treated as a slave and made to do the work of 100 servants. If she is a maidservant, then the males of the house would sexually harass her, and if she protested or refused to provide sex, then she would be kicked out. In fact, it is a quite common practice in the Middle East that maidservants from countries like India, Pakistan, Philippines, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, Sudan, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia are treated as sex slaves and raped by the males of the house they are working in as labor slaves. Many prominent religious leaders in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East countries issued fatwas equating foreign maidservants to the right-hand possession of female slaves who are mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 3. Therefore, the Muslim religious leaders have given legal permission to the employers of those foreign maidservants to have sex with them against their wishes. Notwithstanding, during his slavery days, Gurgis Gabriel found a Christian group in Cairo and joined them. Most of the members of that group were aliens like him who fled from some poor African countries due to famine, religious or political persecutions, and other misfortunes and came to Egypt. He continued to attend the church of that group for 2 years. The leader of that group understood Gurgis' problem and assisted him in getting admission to a Bible college in Calgary. That Bible college granted him a scholarship and student visa to Canada. As soon as he arrived in Canada, Gurgis Gabriel changed his name to Wahid Muhammad Ahmed and claimed to be a Muslim converted from Islam to Christianity. Gradually, he was able to win the hearts of the Sudanese Southern Christians and Arab Christians. His false claim to be a Muslim converted to Christianity played a vital role in winning the hearts of the Sudanese Christians as well as the Arab Christians. He joined both the Sudanese Church and the Arabic Church. After a year, he was elected the pastor of the Arabic Church in Calgary. The Sudanese Christians requested him to be the leader of their churches too. He was able to unite 3 tribal Sudanese churches of Denka, Nur, and Shiluk in one powerful and big Sudanese church. He proved to be a very faithful religious minister. His outstanding performance in both immigrant churches had led a Canadian English church to invite him to be their pastor too. At that time, the Campus Crusade group was looking for leaders from different religious and ethnic backgrounds. His unique personality and apostasy from Islam and conversion to Christianity had led the Campus Crusade office to invite him to join their team of directors. In that way, Pastor Wahid Muhammad Ahmed was able to climb in a short time to a high position that every religious leader in Calgary would love to reach. When Natasha Shams Aldeen came into his life, she gave him the love that he never experienced before. He found in her a lover, a mother, and a sister. He responded to her pure love with all his being. Overnight, she became everything to him. But when he fell in that moral mistake with her when he had sex with her and impregnated her before marriage, which cost him everything in his religious ministry. When Natasha misunderstood him after she heard that malicious rumor about him, he could not tolerate the loss of the person he loved so dearly and his religious ministry. He was rejected by Natasha and her grandfather and kicked out of the 3 churches he was leading and lost his position in the Campus Crusade group. He felt he did not only lose his ministry, but the person whom he loved with every iota of his being. In that desperate situation, he thought his life was destroyed forever. He concluded that he was born out of adultery, lived in Sudan with heavy religious persecution, and cursed from childhood. He did not find any reason to continue his life. In that difficult time, he sought an escape in death, but even death had rejected him. He was rescued by his friend and rushed to the hospital where his life was spared. If Natasha's grandfather didn't travel to Sudan and proved his innocence and his beloved girlfriend returned to him, he would have killed himself as soon as got discharged from hospital. The sad story of Pastor Wahid Muhammad Ahmed made Natasha weep like a baby. She hugged him all the time and assured him that she would always be by his side. She realized that he suffered all his life because of that moral mistake which was committed by his father and mother before he existed. His mother dumped him in that Christian orphanage like she got rid of her feces in a public washroom. He bore alone the mistake of his heartless parents. The Muslim and Christian communities of Sudan despised and rejected him. Natasha knows that she is also an illegitimate daughter like her husband who was born without the sanctity of the marriage bond. But her loving grandfather never abandoned or forsaken her for a second. He gave her all the love and good upbringing that she needed in life. But her husband never found someone to love him the way her grandfather loved her and took care of her until she became a university student and got married. At this junction, Natasha has been forced to make a contrast between the sin that Gurgis' biological parents did before marriage with the sin she and her lover Pastor Wahid had done before they got married. She knows that in the eyes of God all the sins are the same. But in a society like Sudan, which is governed by the Islamic Sharia law, that sin led to harsh punishment and social disgrace, whereas in a secular society like Canada, the same sin is not considered a crime and not disgraced or jeopardized the lives of those who committed it. Natasha knew how her mother was socially disgraced and flogged to death by receiving 200 lashes for committing the same sin that Gurgis' mother and she had done. She also knows that if she is in a Muslim country, she would have been flogged to death like her poor late mother because of the adultery she committed with her lover Wahid. At this point, Natasha wondered as to what happened to the mother of Gurgis. Did she get punished by those harsh Islamic draconian laws and publicly disgraced as happened to her mother, or did she somehow manage to hide her pregnancy until she got rid of it in that Christian orphanage? Natasha understood that even her husband would not be able to answer that question. After revealing his hidden secret, Pastor Wahid informed Natasha that although his Christian parents did not officially adopt him as a son still, he considered them as his own parents. During those years he spent in their orphanage, they gave him the love of parents and looked after him as their own son. Although their love could not be able to shelter him from the harsh persecution of the Sudanese society still, they were the only two people who showed him respect and treated him as their own child. When he came to Canada, Pastor Wahid continued to contact them. Every now and then he sends some money to them. Sadly, a week before his marriage to Natasha, Pastor Wahid came to know that Mr. Wahid Morgas died. He wanted to postpone the wedding and return to Sudan and meet his mother and attend the funeral of his father, but he could not be able to find any excuse to explain his return to Khartoum. Everyone around him knows that he is an apostatized Muslim Sudanese, and he would be put to death if he dared to return to a Muslim country. Therefore, what the excuse he could give to Natasha and her grandfather for postponing their wedding date? At that time, Pastor Wahid poured hot tears for the man who loved him and took care of him for many years. He knew most of the illegitimate children in Sudan were either killed inside their mothers' wombs through honor killings or allowed to be born and then got strangled to death when they were a few minutes infants. None of them would be allowed to live for a few minutes to suck the breasts of his mother. Therefore, Pastor Wahid is always felt highly indebted to that good Christian couple who rescued his life and brought him up in their orphanage. As a matter of fact, when he decided to change his name in Canada, he chose the name of that good Christian man, Mr. Wahid, who brought him up and took care of him as if his own son. After she lost her husband, Mrs. Mary Morgas became all alone. She had no child to take care of her in her old age. All 12 illegitimate children she took care of had grown up and left the orphanage, and none of them had come back or contacted her again except Gurgis Gabrielle. Pastor Wahid wanted to bring his Christian mother to Canada to live with him, but his lies stood on his way. How was he going to explain his relationship with Mrs. Mary Morgas to his wife Natasha and other Christians? While he was desperately trying to ignore his mother for the sake of hiding his false claims, his conscience continued to trouble him. He understood that the only escape for him is to disclose his hidden secret to his wife and convince her to allow him to bring his mother from Sudan to live with them. But then his false claim became a stumbling block. However, when that serious problem of taking care of their 2 little ones arose, Pastor Wahid seized the opportunity and revealed his hidden secret to his wife. Natasha gladly welcomed the proposal and encouraged her husband to bring her mother-in-law as soon as possible. She told him that from childhood, she is looking for a mother, and his Christian mother, Mrs. Mary Morgas, is the one whom God is going to bring from Sudan to Canada to fulfill the daughter's maternal longing. Chapter 44. Halima and Jamal. The first terrorist attack that Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din has planned against the so-called infidels and enemies of God after he settled in Somalia is directed against a large Christian gathering in Canada. Through his long experience in living in Calgary City, he knows that every year the congregations of 3 Christian churches gather together during the month of December to celebrate their Christmas party. They are the combined Sudanese church of 3 southern tribes, the Arabic Church, and a Canadian Baptist church. Those 3 churches used to be pastored by the Sudanese apostatized priest Wahid Muhammad Ahmed. Sheikh Yasser knew, although that priest was forced to step down due to his disgraceful adulterous relation with one of his members, his accursed illegitimate daughter Natasha, still, he continued to be an active member of all 3 churches. So, the evil genius determined to attack that huge gathering of the infidels and finish his bitter 2 enemies, Pastor Wahid and his apostate wife. He wants to carry out his revenge on Natasha because she had scandalized his good reputation among his Sudanese people and his Muhajirin followers in Canada. This time, Sheikh Yasser has masterminded a perfect and flawless plot that seemed to be impossible for Pastor Wahid and Natasha to escape from it. He knew that his previous terrorist attack was made in a hurry. But this time, the devil friend drew a long-range plan that he believed was flawless. He wants to carry out an inside job that Christians would be assassinated by their own fellow Christians. In order to put that plan in practice, Sheikh Yasser decided to fake someone's false conversion from Islam to Christianity. Then, he chose one of his suicidal bombers from among his Mujahideen terrorists. His chosen one is a Somali young man. According to the plan, the Somali man would be wedded to a Somali woman. The woman should not be informed about the plot. She would be used as a cover-up for ensuring the success of the suicidal mission. Before finding the woman, Sheikh Yasser taught the young man how to pretend to be a Muslim who forsook Islam and embraced Christianity. After the young man learned a few verses from the New Testament and other basic tenets of the Christian faith, Sheikh Yasser began to search for a Somali woman to hook him with her. The female spouse that Sheikh Yasser is looking for is not any Somali woman. She has to be a Somali refugee and single woman. He knows that such kind of woman is easy to find in the refugee camps in Nairobi, Kenya. Those camps are filled with thousands of single mothers whose husbands had been either killed in the jihad war in Somalia or forsook them and returned to Somalia to join the terrorist Islamic courts union known as Ittihad al-Mahakim al-Islamiyya, or the terrorist group that called Al-Shabaab, or the Muslim Youth Mujahideen. Harakat al-Shabaab al-Mujahideen, more commonly known as Al-Shabaab, is a jihadist fundamentalist group based in East Africa, Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Djibouti, and Yemen. In 2012, it pledged allegiance to the militant Islamist organization Al-Qaeda. Al-Shabaab rose from obscurity to international prominence in less than 2 years. Al-Shabaab's ideological commitment to global jihadism, its connections to Al-Qaeda, its military capabilities, and its ability to capture and control territory suggests that it will continue to pose a strategic challenge to the USA and many Western countries. Since its emergence, Al-Shabaab received the endorsement of Osama bin Laden and has seen large numbers of Somalis living in the West flock to its camps. Somalia has become, like Pakistan, a significant Al-Qaeda's haven. Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din sent his terrorist young man to Nairobi and ordered him to find a Somali refugee mother who is desperately looking for a husband. She has to be a divorcee or preferably a widow with many orphan children. If that task is successfully achieved, then his young man should marry that single mother and both apply for resettlement in Canada. Sheikh Yasser knows that the UN office prefers to send for resettlement refugees with families rather than single ones. Most of those families are sent for resettlement in the USA, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. Sheikh Yasser told his man to reject any country offered to them except Canada. He should use it as an excuse that he has close relatives in Calgary City, and therefore, he prefers to be with them. As a matter of fact, Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din began to work on that plan as soon as he arrived in Mogadishu. He has 9 months remaining until his suicidal bomber would carry out that terrorist attack at the Christmas party in Canada. After selecting and training his terrorist man how to pretend to be an apostate from Islam, the evil sheikh sent him to Kenya. The young man arrived in Nairobi and pretended to be chased out of his homeland by the Somali terrorists. He claimed that Harakat al-Shabaab al-Mujahideen invaded his peaceful village and killed many men and raped women. He has already some faked documents he brought with him from Somalia showing that some of his family members were killed in that terrorist attack while many villagers fled and displaced all over the country. He and other young villagers were forced by those Islamic terrorists to join them against their wishes. However, he soon managed to escape from those terrorists and smuggled himself across the Somali border into Kenya. Those forged documents made the UN office accept his case and granted him refugee status. As soon as he has been allotted a tent with a group of young Somali men, the young man began to look for his female partner. Although he is young and handsome, he betrothed a Somali woman who has been married 5 times and has a bunch of kids before he met her. 3 of her ex-husbands died in the jihad war in Somalia. 1 forsook her and returned to Mogadishu, and the last one divorced her. She is 32 years old with 7 young children. When she saw the handsome young Somali man who proposed her through some marriage matchmakers, she could not believe her eyes. He is not only handsome but 8 years younger to her and never he married before. The widow and divorcee Somali woman is known as Halima and her 6th husband is called Jamal. Halima agreed to marry Jamal on the following day after he proposed to her. Their marriage took place inside the refugee camp. It is a simple marriage that they spent nothing on it. Jamal left his tent and joined the tent of his new wife and her 7 kids. But Jamal never shared with his wife his false conversion to Christianity. He continued to observe his daily 5 times prayers and every night recite a portion of his holy Quran. Sheikh Yasser told him not to let his wife know about his false conversion until they moved to Canada. Shortly after their marriage, Jamal began to push his wife to frequent her visits to the UN office and plead with them to send her with her husband and 7 children for resettlement in the West. The UN office pushed her file upward from the group of single mothers to the group of refugees with families. But due to the high volume of applicants, the family of Halima and Jamal has been granted resettlement in Canada after 4 months from the time their mock wedding took place. In Islam, the wife is not allowed to change her maiden name after she gets married. She has to be born and die with her father's name and his family name. But her children would carry the first name of her husband and his last name. If she happened to be married to more than one husband, then each child would carry the name of his biological father and father's last name. No husband could adopt another man's children or lend his name and family name to the children of his wife who were born out of her previous marriage or marriages. There is no such thing as a stepfather or stepchildren in Islam. According to the Sharia law, Jamal could not adopt the 7 children of his wife or treat them as his progenies. Therefore, those 7 children would never call him father. They supposed to call him our mother's husband. Also, in Islam, the mother has no right to claim the custody of her children. When Jamal, Halima, and her 7 children arrived at the Calgary International Airport, they appeared as if they were many families in one big family. Every child has a different family name. In the emergency travel documents, the husband's name is written as Jamal Ibrahim Salih and his wife Halima Ali Tahir. Jamal's real name is Muhammad Ahmad Mosa. Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din changed his name because Muhammad Ahmad Mosa was born and brought up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. When he reached the age of 19, Muhammad disappeared from America, and the last thing his family heard about him through the FBI, he is in Somalia and has joined the notorious terrorist Somali movement known as Al-Shabaab jihadist. Sheikh Yasser expected that the FBI had blacklisted and restricted Muhammad Ahmad Mosa from returning to the States and likely passed the information to the RCMP. In the Muslim world, exchanging of names as easy as changing someone's clothes. By giving a bribe of less than $20, the person could change his name, last name, and the name of his wife and all his children in less than 24 hours. As soon as he arrived in Calgary, Jamal began working on the 3rd step of the terrorist plot. He surprised his wife one day when he disclosed to her that he left Islam and converted to Christianity before he fled from Somalia. He claimed due to the fear of being murdered as an apostate, he hid his conversion in the refugee camp in Africa. His wife Halima has become exceedingly outraged and accused him of lying to her and using her to come to the land of the infidels. She threatened that if he does not forsake Christianity and return to Islam, she would reveal his abominable apostasy to other Muslim Somali immigrants and divorce him. Jamal told her to go ahead and do whatever she wanted to do. When Halima perceived that her husband is determined in his decision and she could not intimidate him, she accepted her fate in life and agreed to live with her apostatized husband. She knew and understood that in her age and with her 7 children, no Somali or any Muslim man is going to consider her as a suitable wife. If she left the young and handsome Jamal, she would condemn herself to a life of everlasting celibacy. No Muslim woman would go for another non-Muslim man or live with another man as a conjugal partner without the sanctity of the Islamic halal marriage. After that, the apostate Jamal began to look for immigrants' church to join. Although he could speak, read, and write perfect English, Jamal pretended to know nothing about that language. When he was in the States, he studied from kindergarten to grade 12 in English. He claimed to know only Somali and Arabic languages. The immigration office enrolled Jamal, his wife, and their 7 children in the classes of English as second language. Those courses are meant for all refugee immigrants. During his study, Jamal found some Sudanese Christian immigrants in those classes and requested them to direct him to a good immigrant community church. He told them that he is a new convert from Islam to Christianity. The Sudanese Christians have rejoiced over the apostate Somali Jamal. They have never heard before that day a Somali left Islam and embraced Christianity. As a matter of fact, the only 100% Muslim two countries in the whole world are Somalia and Saudi Arabia. These two countries have zero tolerance to apostasy, and every foreigner caught with a Bible at the airport would be put to death. No church is allowed in those pure Islamic soils, and no form of Christians gathering is permitted. It is less dangerous to be arrested with drugs or alcohol in your house, or in the very act of committing adultery with a prostitute than having a Bible in your possession. At any rate, those Sudanese Christians gave Jamal the address of the combined Sudanese church, which used to be pastored by the ex-pastor Wahid Muhammad Ahmed. The claim of Jamal to be a Somali Muslim converted to Christianity is spread like fire among the immigrant Christians as well as the immigrant Muslims in Calgary City, and it reached Edmonton City. The Somali Muslims received the news with great shock, and such incredible news created indescribable anger in their hearts. As we have already mentioned, Somalia and Saudi Arabia are the only two countries in the world that are inhabited by Muslims only. There is not a single Christian church in either country. Every Saudi or Somali man or woman forsook Islam and converted to Christianity was put to death either by his family or neighbors or beheaded by the Sharia court. Accordingly, the Somali immigrants in Calgary boycotted Jamal and his wife before even they met them. In the ESL classes, the other Somali immigrants avoided associating with Jamal and his wife as if the two are carrying a contagious disease such as coronavirus. The Somali women spat on the ground whenever Halima and her children walked near them. The Somali men know that the law in Canada would not allow them to kill Jamal, and hence, whenever he walked near them, they hailed him with threats and curses in their language. Some of them curse Satan and ask Allah to protect them and their wives and children from the abomination of apostasy. The Somali leader of the terrorist group of the Muslim Brotherhood came all the way from Edmonton to Calgary and tried to confront Jamal, but the apostate Somali refused to meet him. When Jamal refused to talk to him, the dangerous leader declared him as an apostate man who fell out of the blessed family of Ibrahim. Therefore, he uttered his fatwa in front of a big gathering of Somali Muslims and said the shedding of the blood of the apostate Jamal is permissible to any faithful Muslim man or Muslimah. Nonetheless, in order to achieve his evil goal, the terrorist Jamal tolerated all social and spiritual persecutions of his Somali people and continued to pretend to be a Muslim converted to Christianity. He even stopped performing his daily 5 prayers and ceased to recite his holy Quran. In that way, Jamal did not only fool his wife and the Muslim community, but the Sudanese and Arabic churches received him in their midst as a brave hero returning from the war zone. Some Arab and Sudanese Christian families invited him and his wife and her 7 children for food in their houses. Some members of the church visited them in their apartment and brought with them some Christmas gifts for the children. Whenever Jamal and his wife wanted to go shopping, there would be some volunteers from the church to help them. Chapter 45. Prior to the terrorist attack on the Christmas party, Pastor Wahid and Natasha, like other Christians in the Arabic and Sudanese churches, sincerely believed the conversion of the Somali immigrant Jamal. Even the pastors of those 2 immigrants' churches and their elders believe that Jamal is a genuine apostate. Many members of the 2 churches, including the leaders, prayed for the conversion of Jamal's Muslim wife, Halima, and her 7 children. Some believers kept a special day of fasting and praying for the salvation of Halima and her kids. They invited Jamal to come and join them in their fasting and praying for the souls of his wife and her 7 children. Jamal attended that meeting and pretended to be very much concerned about the salvation of his wife and her children. He is a good actor and deceiver and made everyone believe he is truly an apostate. In accordance, after 2 months from the day of their arrival in Calgary, Halima's heart has been touched by the pure love that the Christians poured on her husband and her 7 children. Before she experienced that pure love, her heart was dried up by her bitter experiences of having 6 husbands without her getting love from any of them. She is like the Samaritan woman who met Jesus at the well, Gospel of John 4, verses 4 to 26. Men gave her nothing except misery and abuse. All of them used her, abused her, and threw her away like tissue papers inside a toilet after she became of no use to them. Whenever her husband found a younger and prettier Somali girl, he ditched Halima and married his new catch. When she married her first husband, Halima was a mere child of 10 years of age. After 4 years, that husband blew his body in bits and pieces and supposedly died as a martyr in jihad and went to enjoy his 72 virgins in paradise. After completing the iddah period of 3 months and 10 days, Halima was sold by her parents in another marriage to a man as old as her father. That old guy left her too and went after another female child. In that way, the poor Halima went from one man to another until her road crossed the road of her young and handsome husband Jamal, who became her man number 6. Even in Jamal, she did not find the love that her soul is longing for. The love of those Christians made Halima open her soul for the fountain of Jesus' love to fill it. Halima accepted the Lord and informed her husband about her willingness to join his church as a female believer in Jesus. Jamal is shocked and perplexed when his wife told him that she has accepted Jesus Christ from the depth of her heart. She also informed him that she is prepared to convert all her 7 children to Christianity. Jamal found himself in a dilemma. If he tried to prevent her from becoming a Christian and changing the religion of her children, then he has to explain to her and other Christians why he is against her conversion. On the other hand, if he accepted her conversion and allowed her to convert her children, then he expected that his Allah would hold him accountable for misguiding 8 Muslim souls. However, in order to successfully accomplish his suicidal mission, Jamal said to himself, "Let the damned Halima and her children go to hell." Each and every one of his 72 virgins of paradise is 1,000,000 times more beautiful than Halima, who got married 5 men before him, and he married her as a second-hand woman. Every Muslim man wants to marry a virgin wife. The concept of the virgins of paradise has affected the relation between men and their female counterparts. The Muslim man looks at his wife as inferior to the virgin of paradise because she loses her virginity after marriage, whereas the latter is always a virgin. Jamal, like any Muslim terrorist, is prepared to kill his father if he stands between him and his terrorist mission. Islam requires that even if your father or brother is a kafir infidel and he meets you in battle, you must strike off his neck. It is called in Islam the doctrine of the al-wala wal-bara, which means love for the sake of Allah and hate for the sake of Allah. In other words, a true Muslim must love those who love Allah and His Prophet and hate those who are enemies of Islam. However, Jamal remembered that Halima is just a means for achieving his end. He believes that Allah has promised him that he is going to wed him in paradise with 72 virgins who are 1,000,000 times more beautiful than any woman on this earth. The Virgin of Paradise is not only an eternal virgin, but she will neither urinate nor defecate nor menstruate. She will not become pregnant either. Even if the man has sex with her 1,000,000 times, he cannot make her pregnant. What Allah required from the mujahid is al-shahada, or martyrdom in jihad. Jamal strongly believes that as soon as he would blow himself up in the cause of Allah, then, in a twinkling of an eye, all those 72 lovely virgins would be his wives and waiting for him bare naked on his heavenly wedding bed in paradise. At that moment, he remembered the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad that his leaders always quoted whenever they wanted to send someone for a suicidal mission. Al-Mikdam ibn Matakarb said, "Allah be well pleased with him. The Messenger of Allah said, upon him blessings and peace, for the shaheed, or martyr in jihad. In the divine presence there will be 6 qualities. 1. He will be forgiven from the first moment his blood is spilled. 2. He shall see his seat in paradise and be protected against the punishment of the grave. 3. He shall be safe from the greatest terror of the rising of the dead. 4. He shall be crowned with the diadem of dignity, 1 ruby, of which is worth more than the entire world and its contents. 5. He shall be coupled with 72 spouses from the wide-eyed maidens of paradise. And 6. He shall be granted to intercede for 70 of his relatives." Reported by Ahmad and Al-Tirmizi. For the sake of obtaining the shahada, martyrdom, Jamal forsook the comfortable life of living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at the most advanced country in the world, the United States of America, returned to the most backward country in the world. Somalia, and lived as a wanderer and warrior in the chaotic camps of the Mujahideen in the outskirts of Mogadishu. He knows by heart all the verses of the Quran and the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad that promised and described the beauties of those lovely sublime female creatures he is going to get as soon as he died as a martyr in the cause of jihad. We shall wed them unto virgins, fair ones with wide, lovely eyes. Quran, Surah Al-Dukhan 44, verses 51 to 54. Therein maidens resting their glances, untouched before them by any man or jinn. They are lovely girls as rubies, beautiful as coral. Quran, Surah Al-Rahman 55, verses 56 to 58. The fair, the beautiful ones, Hurriyat girls, with large eyeballs kept close in their pavilions. Quran, Surah Al-Rahman 55, verse 72. Prophet Muhammad also offered many incentives for those who would wage jihad in their lives. The Mujahideen are assured of entering paradise before the first drop of their blood falls to earth. The holy scriptures of Islam also say that the beautiful virgins of paradise come down to earth to take the spirit of the Mujahid who is about to die before the first drop of his blood falls to earth. The martyrs are promised 72 Hurriyat girls in paradise. These Hurriyat are more beautiful than all the beauties of the world combined. In the meantime, the happiness of the Christian believers became double when Halima confessed her belief in Jesus and expressed her readiness to bring all her Muslim children to the Lord. Her husband Jamal tried to play many tricks to prevent her from converting her Muslim children to Christianity, but he failed. Halima took her children with her to both Sudanese and Arabic churches and put them in Sunday school for learning the basic teachings of Christianity. When he could not be able to stop her, Jamal gave up and concentrated on his terrorist plan. He knows that he has a few days to live before he would carry out his attack and go up to paradise to enjoy those rivers of wine, milk, and honey with his 72 virgins. He came to know that the Christmas party had been scheduled to take place on December 17th. He learned that the congregations of 3 churches, Sudanese Church, Arabic Church, and English Baptist Church, would gather in the evening of that day and celebrate their Christmas party and have a big feast. Jamal vowed to his Allah that he would not allow any one of those infidels to taste the food of that party. He promised his Allah that he would send all those infidels and their children to hell before they would finish their worship of Satan. In the meantime, Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din is getting daily updates through emails about the progress of Jamal. Some of his contacts in Calgary got hold of Jamal as soon as he arrived in Canada. Many times, Jamal fooled his wife, went by himself and met those Muslim followers of the Sheikh Yasser. Those men are assisting him in the plan. They promised to supply him with the bombs for the suicidal mission. The bombs would be given to him one day prior to the attack. It is his duty to make sure that neither his wife nor her children should see or know about those bombs. Jamal assured them that he would make sure that the bombs would be kept out of the reach of Halima and her children. In the meantime, he has been trained by those men in how to conceal the bombs inside his clothes before he would go for the Christmas party. They bought him a beautiful black suit, shirt, trouser, and shoes. They told him most of the Christians put fine clothes at their Christmas party. Everything went as planned except for a small mistake that happened on the night prior to the attack. Jamal brought the bombs into the apartment and hid them from his wife and her children. After his wife and children went to sleep that night, Jamal decided to offer a prayer of success to his Allah and recite some verses of the Quran. He went to the living room, seated himself in bended knees, and began to offer his prayer. When he finished his prayer, he started to recite some verses of the Quran. His recitation made Halima wake up from her sleep. She is shocked and exceedingly perplexed when she hears someone reciting the verses of the Quran in her apartment. When she overcame her shock, Halima recognized the voice of her husband. She then went to the place where the recitation was coming from. To her great surprise, she saw her husband kneeling in the living room and reciting the Quran. "Jamal," shouted Halima in great astonishment, "why are you reciting the Quran?" Jamal never expected his wife to get up at that time and spy on him. But he has understood that she caught him red-handed, and he has no explanation to offer to her to justify his recitation of the Quran. He stood up slowly and looked at his wife with eyes full of fear and anger. I am just reciting those verses in order to compare them to the teachings of the Bible. Halima refused to buy that lie. She heard him very clearly reciting those verses of the Quran, which she knows that Muslim mujahideen are supposed to recite before they go for a suicidal mission to blow themselves up in jihad against the infidels. You have fooled me and deceived many people and made them believe that you are a Christian when in fact you are still a Muslim in your heart. You are a big deceiver. You are the devil himself. Don't call me the devil. Yes, I am still Muslim, and I will never leave my beautiful Islamic faith and follow the distorted and corrupted religion of those unclean brothers of monkeys and pigs as you have done. You have become an infidel apostate, and shedding of your blood is permissible to any faithful Muslim man or woman. You have become a follower of Satan. You are the one who is following the devil. I am going to expose your deception among all Christian believers. I know for sure you have something evil in your mind. Most likely you are planning to blow yourself up tomorrow at the Christmas party and kill with you many innocent men, women, and children, but I will never allow you to kill one single innocent Christian. Inshallah and Allah willing, tomorrow I will perform Shahada, and I shall kill all those infidels, and you are going to be the first one of them. As soon as he voiced out his evil promise, Jamal ran to Halima and jumped on her and caught hold of her neck. Halima has not expected him to attack her, and hence she has been taken unguarded and prepared for his brutal attack. She struggled to free her neck from his strong grip, but she could not. He had already tightened his hold on her neck and begun to strangle her. Halima kicked with her hands and legs, but she could not be able to free her neck from his strong hands. He continued to tighten his grip until she stopped moving. Her strangled body has fallen on the floor, but he does not let go of her neck until he killed her in cold blood. The murder of Halima put Jamal in a difficult state. He does not know what to do with her dead body and how he is going to explain her disappearance to her children in the morning and other Christians. He decided to contact his Muslim assistants and inform them about the murder of his wife and seek their advice. He understood that he had less than 24 hours left for him to accomplish his Allah-given mission, leave this fleeting life with all its pain and turmoil, go to his Allah, and enjoy his 72 virgins in paradise. Therefore, Jamal called one of those men of Sheikh Yasser who supplied him with the bombs and informed him about the murder of his apostate wife and why he killed her. The man promised him that he would send some men to his apartment and help him to get rid of the dead carcass of his infidel wife. Shortly after that midnight phone call, a van stopped in front of the building where Jamal was living. Two men came out of the van and rang the bell. Jamal immediately responded and opened the door for them. The two men brought with them a big bag. Then, the dead body of Halima was forcibly inserted inside that huge bag. After that, the dead body was transferred out of the apartment to the van. Jamal came down with the two men and helped them to carry the dead body of his wife inside the van. Then, the two men assured Jamal that they would get rid of the dead corpse of his accursed wife, and therefore he has nothing to worry about anymore. He has to return to his apartment and spend the rest of the time resting. They told him to forget about his filthy apostatized wife and concentrate on the great rewards that the exalted Allah is going to bestow upon him when he explodes his body in smithereens along with those brothers of apes and pigs. When Jamal returned to his apartment, he fell asleep as if he had done nothing wrong. Notwithstanding, the arrival of those two terrorists at such late hours of the night did not go unnoticed by some of the neighbors. The huge bag they brought with them, and when they left that bag looked as if they have loaded inside it the entire Somali family. Actually, the murdered Somali woman is a very fat woman. Her huge body equaled twice the body of her husband. That night the police received 3 different frantic calls reporting the same peculiar activities in the apartment of that Somali family. One of the callers gave the plate number of the van that the suspected visitors were driving. Another caller informed the police that he heard some quarreling in the apartment of the Somali family an hour before those night visitors came in. Yet, a third caller suspected a nasty fight between his Somali neighbors took place at midnight. He said he would not be surprised if he comes to know later that the Somali man has killed his wife and smuggled her dead body in that huge bag. The police took seriously those calls and issued orders to the night officers who were on duty to find and intercept that van. Every police officer on the road received that order, and a citywide search began for that van. The van is spotted while it is emerging out of the city and heading toward the Trans-Canada Highway. 3 police cars began to chase it. Although the 2 men saw that the police cars are chasing them, still they did not stop their van. Instead, they accelerated their speed and went beyond the speed limit. The police officers informed the city police headquarters to send a helicopter. They anticipated that they are going after dangerous Islamic terrorists. Before the helicopter arrived, the terrorists suddenly stopped their van and waited for the officers to approach them. The first police car went a few meters ahead and stopped in front of the van, whereas the second one stopped just behind the car. 4 police officers came out of their cars and surrounded the suspect's vehicle. The terrorists took them by surprise and opened fire on them. 2 officers were shot, and the other 2 managed to escape and return to their car. The van resumed its escape. At that critical moment, the helicopter and another couple of police cars have arrived just a few minutes after the van went into high speed again. The other 2 cops carried their wounded fellow police officers and took them inside their car. That night happened to be the coldest day of the year. The 2 officers could not be able to leave their injured fellow officers freezing to death on that cold night. Therefore, they allowed the terrorist van to escape and engaged in rescuing their injured officers. When the 2 other police cars arrived along with the helicopter, the terrorists' van has vanished. Chapter 46. The Divine Miraculous Rescue. The police headquarters sent the addition of 15 police cars on the Trans-Canada Highway. The cars spread on every highway that is leaving the city and began a thorough search for that terrorist vehicle. The other 3 police helicopters joined the other 17 cars and choppers and searched every highway around the city of Calgary. Eventually, the police found the terrorist's van abandoned by its driver and the other man who shot the 2 police officers. It was 2:30 in the morning when the police found the van. The terrorists set their van on fire and escaped. The dead body of Halima is found inside the van. Halima's body had been purposely completely burned, and the flame disfigured her face. Nonetheless, the police identified the burned body as the dead body of the wife of the Somali man. The police had already arrested Jamal as soon as the 2 terrorists opened fire on the 2 police officers. At the same time, the 7 children of the late Halima have been moved out of the apartment by the police of Calgary. The police decided to find some foster homes and get those parentless kids adopted by some good families. At first, the police did not search the apartment of the Somali family. The case has been considered domestic violence, which resulted in the murder of Halima by her husband Jamal. However, when one of the 2 wounded police officers died shortly after arriving in the hospital, the police began to suspect something more than domestic violence. The other police officer survived with a bullet on his right shoulder. The Calgary police put a lot of pressure on Jamal in order to reveal the identities of the 2 men. The police identified the name and address of the owner of the van through the car plate number. The owner of that van was not found in his house when the police went to arrest him. His wife informed the police that her husband had left the house at midnight without informing her where he was going. The owner of the van happened to be one of the leaders of the suspected Islamic group of Al-Muhajirin. After its main leader, Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din was involved in the kidnap and rape of his daughter Natasha Muhammad Ahmed, the group has been placed under police surveillance. The police are puzzled about the connection between Jamal and the owner of that van. The initial investigations revealed that Jamal is an active Christian member of 2 churches of some immigrants from Africa and the Middle East. The leaders of both churches testified that Jamal is a Muslim converted to Christianity. Through him, his wife Halima has recently become a Christian too. They further said that Halima's children have joined the church along with their mother and stepfather and became part of the Sunday school. Moreover, the Christian leaders testified that Jamal and Halima are exceedingly good and committed Christians. Furthermore, Jamal does not seem to be a violent man. Therefore, the murder of his wife puzzled the leaders of those churches too. Accordingly, the police did not find any connection between Jamal and the missing Muslim owner of the van. The 2 suspects came to Jamal's apartment at midnight and tried to help him to get rid of the dead body of his wife. By then, the hospital conducted a postmortem on Halima's dead body and confirmed that Jamal murdered his wife by strangling her to death. So, to solve that puzzle and find a link between the Christian murderer and the Muslim owner of the van, the police made another visit to Jamal's apartment. When the apartment is searched, that riddle is solved and the most dangerous terrorist plot is unearthed. The police found all the bombs that had been designed for the attack on the next day evening. Jamal left a recorded video mentioning that he is a faithful Muslim but pretended to be an apostate in order to carry jihad against the infidels of the three churches. He also mentioned that his main target is to finish the job, which had been left unfinished by those two faithful Eritrean Islamic Mujahideen martyrs who killed the Christian infidels in the Apostolic Church. By his last statement, the police understood that the main targets of the terrorist attack are to murder Pastor Wahid and his wife Natasha. He also mentioned he determined to blow his body up and kill the infidels of three churches in their Christmas party. When the place that the terrorist plot was supposed to be carried out on has been identified, the police canceled the Christmas party and sealed the hall and the entire building after evacuating it. The leaders of the three churches phoned all their members and notified them that the police authority called off the Christmas party and sealed the hall because a terrorist plot was foiled at the last moment. According to the report of the police of Calgary, some Islamic terrorists in the city are plotting to use the Somali man Jamal to blow up the joined gathering of the Christmas party. The Christian members received the news of the terrorist plot with great astonishment and dread. None of them has suspected that the apostatized Somali man is a Muslim terrorist undercover. Everyone considered it a miraculous escape. The police intercepted the two terrorists who burned their vehicle, abandoned it, and fled while they are trying to cross the Alberta border and enter the British Columbia province. They are caught while they are traveling by a stolen vehicle. The police arrested them and transferred them back to the city of Calgary. The Calgary police found the phone number of one of those two apprehended terrorists stored in the call history on the cell phone of Jamal. The number showed that Jamal called that terrorist's number at 12:37 midnight. When those two terrorists have been interrogated, they dragged with them 14 members of the Muhajirin group, which used to be headed by the notorious criminal Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din. Its new leader and his assistants have been arrested by the police. Those terrorists' computers, cell phones, call histories, and daily activities have been thoroughly searched. Even their houses and shops have been topping to bottom searched. The police found that 5 of them are in day-to-day contact with Sheikh Yasser Sheikh al-Din. In their computers and cell phones, there are email correspondences between them and the wanted terrorist Sheikh. Those emails updated the fugitive Sheikh Yasser in the progress of the terrorist plot that was supposed to take place at the Christmas party. When Jamal was confronted with all these pieces of evidence, he confessed his role in the plot. He confessed that he had been sent by his group leader Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din from Somalia to Kenya to join the refugee camps. Then, he explained how his leader trained him in pretending to be a Muslim converted to Christianity and then sent him to Kenya to look for a single Somali mother in the refugee camps in Nairobi. He admitted that he cheated on Halima and made her believe that he was interested in marrying her because he liked her. Through her, he was able to come to Canada. Moreover, Jamal has admitted that Halima has nothing to do with the terrorist plot of blowing up the Christmas party. She is the one who spoiled the flawless plan at the last moment when she suspected his night prayer and recitation of the Quran. He further admitted that he killed her when she threatened to expose him and inform other Christians about his suicidal mission. The police of Calgary are amazed by the story of Jamal. It sounded to them as if he is telling a fairy tale or a detective story written by the English female writer Agatha Christie. How anyone on earth could think of masterminding such a flawless terrorist plot? The mastermind of such an excellent plot is more than an evil genius. If it wasn't for that night recitation of the Quran, which apparently was not part of the plot, Jamal would have murdered over 700 people at that jointly organized Christmas party. If his wife did not wake up in the middle of the night and caught him red-handed and threatened to inform other Christians, many innocent children would have been slaughtered in cold-blooded mass murder. All those who are supposed to be blown up in that party gave thanks to God for saving them from such a horrifying terrorist attack. They considered Halima to be a symbol of the heroic act and died as a Christian martyr. They considered her the new incarnation of the first female Christian martyr, the girl perpetual, that faithful young Christian mother who was killed by the Romans for refusing to deny her Lord Jesus Christ. They also believe that her precious soul is now with the Lord who used her to save many innocent people. Every believer decided to attend her funeral. Meanwhile, the police kept Halima's 7 children in protected custody until the court and the social work department would decide their future. The police made another startling discovery when it appeared that Jamal is speaking perfect American English. According to the information that reached the immigration office from the UN office and the Canadian embassy in Nairobi, Jamal can speak only Somali and Arabic languages. When he arrived in Canada, he had been enrolled along with his wife in the ESL classes for learning English as a second language. The RCMP referred the case of Jamal to the American FBI and demanded a background check upon him. His fingerprints revealed that he was born and brought up in Minneapolis to a Somali-American family. His real name is Muhammad Ahmad Mosa. When he reached the age of 18, Muhammad disappeared from the USA, and the last thing his family heard about him through the FBI is that their son reached Somalia and joined the Al-Shabaab jihadist movement. In order to return to North America, Muhammad Ahmad Mosa had changed his name to Jamal Ibrahim Salih because he anticipated that the FBI has blacklisted his real name, restricted him from returning to America, and passed that information to the RCMP. Anyway, after 3 days, the leader of the Somali community in Calgary approached the hospital and demanded the body of Halima. He informed the hospital authority that Halima is a Somali woman, and hence the Somali people want to bury the late Muslim woman. Before accepting his demand, the hospital authority informed the police. The police authority agreed that the body of the Somali woman to be buried by her Somali community. When Pastor Wahid heard that the converted Somali Christian woman is going to be buried as a Muslim, he requested his church leaders to intervene and stop the Somali Muslims from taking her body. The church leaders approached the police authority and requested them to stop the Islamic burial of the Christian woman Halima Ali Tahir. The police authority refused to accept the request of the church leaders on the ground that Canada is a multicultural country, and every ethnic group is allowed to follow their cultural values and practices if those traditions do not conflict with the Canadian laws. Therefore, the police authority rejected the request of the church leaders because they do not have any official proof, such as a baptismal certificate, to prove that Halima has converted from Islam to Christianity. Unfortunately, before her water baptism, the Somali woman had been cruelly murdered by her terrorist husband. However, although Halima had been buried in the Muslim graveyards, still hundreds of Christians had attended and participated in her burial and prayed for the well-being of her 7 children. As a matter of fact, many of those Somali Muslims have become exceedingly happy when they came to know Jamal is not an apostate but a pretender. They have also hated the late Halima with bitterness when they learned that she is the one who spoiled the jihad mission of her brave Muslim husband Jamal. Although they buried her in Muslim graveyards, many of them believe she died as an accursed apostate, and she has gone to hell to burn with other infidels forever. The leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, who came from Edmonton City and declared Jamal as an apostate and the shedding of his blood is permissible, has become extremely happy when he heard the apprehended Somali terrorist is a Muslim undercover. But he cursed the late Halima, who spoiled the martyrdom of her courageous husband Jamal. At this moment of time, the great Somali terrorist leader remembered the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, which said the woman comes in the form of Satan and she retreats in the form of the devil. As soon as the Somali Muslims have succeeded in burying Halima as a Muslim woman, they began to demand the custody of her 7 children. They argued that all her 7 children were born as Muslims and having Muslim first names and last names. Their fathers are Muslim men too. The church leaders once again tried to intervene and stop the Christian children of the late female Christian martyr Halima from being given to Muslim families, but they also could not succeed. Even so, this time the church leaders did not give up and took the matter to court. Sadly, after the controversial issue has been hotly debated before a Canadian magistrate in a small claims court by a Christian lawyer and a Muslim advocate, the Somali community won and got a court order for adopting the children of the deceased Somali woman. Although adoption is forbidden in Islam, still the Muslim Somali community has compromised in this Quranic command in order to stop Halima's children from being raised up as Christians. Therefore, all 7 children have been entrusted into the custody of 3 Somali Muslim families.